The brand new Toyota Prius and Prius Prime. This is a ground-up redesign of this vehicle. The car market has changed, and it was time for Toyota to take the Prius brand out of the Stone Ages. And that's exactly what they did. Gone is the quirky design, and this is by far the least conservative approach I've seen in a vehicle they made since the LC500. Now, when we're talking about exterior styling, it is very subjective, but what you will see is a level of cohesion not found in this platform or compact segment of car. It doesn't look like a shitbox. It looks far more expensive than what it is. It's the way that the headlights integrate in the bumper without having this massive grille or overstyling along the side and the front of it. The rear hatch, the way that the taillights are integrated into it, it just looks really clean. It looks very modern without being quirky like the last Prius was. Now, when they pulled the sheet off this car for the first time I saw it, I couldn't help draw the parallels to the Dodge Dart because I grew up with a lot of those cars. And I remember when the Intrepid came out, it was a big deal. They're like, cab forward, all the marketing with that. And that's because the windshield was so long and extended over the front wheels, it gave this like spaceship-ish style design from the outside, and it was really striking for the era, and I feel like this borrows some of that, and that's why I'm drawing the parallels to it. But some of that exterior design has affected the interior usability. So when you get on the inside, the first thing you're gonna notice is these enormous A-pillars that are in here, and despite putting the side glass so you can see, when you're turning, I feel like there's always a blind spot in here from them. Because the windshield goes so far forward that you can't even reach the front of it, the entire dashboard is just so large. There's so much wasted space with all the plastics here. And they've done the BZ4X thing here with the gauge cluster that's kind of like a HUD/gauge cluster, but if you're in the wrong position with the steering wheel where you want it, you could literally block the gauge cluster with the steering wheel position. And you know, there's just weird things like that in here that you kind of get used to, but there is not a lot of glass in here because of the outside shape. It looks cool on the outside, but you realize your visibility is not that good. That's really the biggest knock. So let's get into the positives. It's got Toyota stuff. All the knobs, buttons, and switches in here are physical. From your auto brights to your steering wheel heater to your steering wheel controls, just traditional Toyota stuff. You're never going to complain about how to utilize any of this. Your drive mode selectors for EV mode or hybrid mode are all simple right by the shifter. You have this old school like LC500 old Prius shifter in here that's a digi-stick. But some of the storage is really well thought out. Like where you would put your phone down here and the hidden storage space underneath, you can really hide some great stuff in here, and I've already chosen to do that. I put my awards and some of my butt cream in here. And then the cup holders are pretty good. Things are not gonna fly out. And then the best thing is the phone storage holder for the wireless charger. It's a great implementation right by the shifter. You can get to it easily and it doesn't slide around or fly out. The door pockets are not the biggest, and the armrest is not the biggest for storage. The big surprise, this is a smaller car. Getting in and out of this vehicle can be a little bit of a trouble. You have to duck your head because the roof line's pretty low relative to the seating position, but getting in and out of the back seats are pretty good. For a car of this size, and you think about it's on the same architecture as the Corolla, they've done a pretty good job in packaging. And with the hatch in the back, really, it's amazing that you can fit so much stuff back there. Really, it's like a really tiny CUV thing. You could use this as your only car. You could fit your family in here, and you can fit a lot of things in the back. And I think that's what I really liked. And with the seats down, there's almost no sacrifice of having a small car that does everyday duty. And I think that's what they've done really good here. And the technology implementation has also improved greatly. With Toyota Connected, there's like zero complaints with this thing. You know, wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay work well. The usability is simple. You have Google Maps. You have all of the things that you really want. And of course, there's other things about the technology suite that have improved. They've updated their safety suite with lane departure. You now have traffic jam assist. So some of the things I talked about with visibility have been offset by the fact that their safety suite has improved quite a bit where you can lean on that more. There's less guesswork there. They have updated some of their chimes and beeps over the previous Toyota products, so now the turn signals go through the speakers and their chimes and all that are more modern. So there's little things that they're doing all over the place, including on the Prius Prime giving this red dashboard inlay. There's just subtleties that make this feel like a more special car than the price point would suggest. But let's get into the shop. We're going to talk about the Prius Prime.
Mark, what are we under finally?
Prius Prime, that's what this is going to focus on. I went to the launch event for this car, and it rained the whole time, unfortunately, in California. So I didn't just want to crap something out. I wanted to take a more comprehensive look at it because I think it is a special car. I really appreciated the previous generation Prius Prime. Unfortunately, it didn't age all that well visually, but the concept of it is great. So Toyota knew that the sedan market is cooled quite a bit, and they couldn't just do what they did before. It needed a reinvention. So they're taking what they did with the old car and essentially took that and made it better mechanically and visually far more striking. So let's get into the mechanical part of this, Jack.
Toyota is still chasing hybrids. And when you talk to people who don't know anything, they'll say, why are you even working on hybrids? You should just make everything EV. And there's an argument Toyota makes, and it comes down to resources, the resources it takes to build a car.
It's not just that they can't do it, it's the physical battery resources, the electric motors, and all the parts that go into making a fully electric vehicle. So Toyota's concept is, do we make 70 hybrids or do we make one BEV? And it makes a lot of sense. And one of the reasons why we're seeing problems, and it's not just Toyota, you see Hyundai and Kia, they're like, why are their sales numbers so low? Why don't they sell more EVs? There's advertising everywhere. Well, they can't make anymore. They're production limited. And the Prime is another example. The Prius Prime is another example where they're only going to be able to make 10,000 of these the first year. The second year, they're really stretching it to try to make 15,000. Now you consider the demand for this and you look at the amount of availability, it's going to be hard to get this. So if you really care about this and you want this, you got to get on a list right away. And this is the sad state of not just, sports cars. It's happening to commodity cars like this too. And so knowing that, the Prime is going to be limited. What does it do well over the regular hybrid, Jack?
Main thing is it gets even better fuel economy, and theoretically at least, it gets reasonable EV range. It's about 50% better than the prior generation Prius Prime. So with its a little bit over 13 kilowatt hour battery, in the non-SE trim, you're looking at a little less than 40 miles of EV range. And in the SE trim, which is the base trim, you're looking at over 44,
it's about 44 miles. And of course, this is all variable, depending on temperature, like what you're in condition-wise, if you're running AC. But best case scenario, you're looking at about 40, regardless of your trim level. Now, there are some changes with the SE versus the XSE trims. Like the SE trims are lower, the turning circle is a bit shorter, and the tires are more rolling resistant. So you're getting better fuel economy. The coefficient of drag could be potentially a little bit better because it's lower. But this is a 0.27 coefficient of drag. It's really, really slippery, and they did it without air curtains or wheel curtains. I mean, it's just about body structure and airflow underneath, and that's what you really look at when you see this, is active shutters in the front. They've made it look better, but they haven't sacrificed its usability. Its core function is to drive this around an EV for about 40 miles and then get around 45 to 50 miles per gallon all the time. And in my drive in California, I did get really, really close to 50 miles per gallon the entire drive. And I haven't driven this much yet, but that's what you're looking at. That's why you're buying this.
This is on the latest iteration of TNGA-C, which is their global architecture, their small car variant. So it's more rigid, it's quieter than the last generation TNGA-C products. It's also lower by 2 inches, it's longer by 1 inch, and it's wider by 1 inch. So it's supposed to have improved driving dynamics. It's definitely still on the softer side.
Yeah.
But that's again what the Prius is supposed to be. When it comes to speed, it is no longer a penalty box on the highway. You're no longer going to be holding up traffic. With its combined system output of 220 horsepower, it gets to 0 to 60 in 6.6 seconds. The main way it did it is it updated the electric motors. It has a more recent design that puts out a little bit more power. And the internal combustion engine went from a 1.8 to a 2 liter. So it dramatically increased in power to like 150 horsepower out of the 2 liter, which is a noticeable
Yeah,
improvement.
as I said, it's like 100% increase in power, which makes sense. You have a lithium ion pack, you have more displacement, and you still have dual injection with port and direct. So they're really trying to work on the reliability part, the power part, the efficiency part, and now the aesthetic part that the Prius has not been known for in the past, Jack. So I think let's do it. Let's get this on the road.
I can't wait.
All right, Jack, let's do it. It's funny that the full power comes in after like 70 miles an hour, and I've done the launch like 20 different ways with this, and if you're launching in EV only mode, it's a putter. I mean, it's way better than it used to be. But I think some of this is like you're expecting, oh, it's 100% more powerful. This is not going to blow your doors up.
100% more than zero is still not a
So here's the thing. I had a pretty lighthearted discussion with the product planning group and the marketing people, the small group. There's like 3 or 4 of them when I was at the press event. And they're like, the marketing woman, she's just told me the response of how positive people are about this car is so great, and it makes us feel so good that people really like it. I'm like, well, it's not hard to do when the bar is set so low. And that was kind of the other car. You know, the other car was just long in the tooth. Despite the styling changes, the Prius has never had a cool factor. It's been trashed in the media. It's got this weird, like, outside perspective of being somebody that sits in the left lane, oblivious to the rest of the world. The pompousness from, like, South Park when they made a joke about it. But luckily, now a lot of that market has moved over to, like, Teslas. And
it's the Model 3.
Yeah, the Model 3 has replaced it. So they have this ability to really reboot this car, and I think people are receptive to it because we're tired of SUVs. Now we have a sedan that has some passion to it, and it's much better driving. It is, for whatever reason, it's much better driving. Maybe it's just the power, maybe it's the refinement and the isolation that you get out of it, and its softness. It really is a soft, compliant car.
I mean, the argument for this product now is for the type of driving most people do. This is perfect. You sit on the highway, you sit in traffic, it's quiet enough, it's soft enough, it's got enough space to replace a small SUV or CUV without the driving dynamics compromise of one of those vehicles. And it really is an exceptional looking car for the class of vehicle it is. The interior, while there definitely, you are correct, compromises to the frontward visibility and for the sake of styling, it's a nice place to be, man. This is a really nice car.
Yeah, it's something that I drove in great length, and I know you're going to get to drive it on a trip here in a little bit. I think what I appreciate the most is, you know, when you're using it, is it in its intended purpose. Like your daily commute, getting 40 miles of pure EV range is almost 90% enough for most of the population, at least in the United States. I love the fact that I can switch it over to hybrid or pure EV, and you can force charge it. So like if I don't want to plug it in when I get home, I can just force charge it on all the way home and still have a 40 miles range ready to go without having to deal with like plugging it into a wall. There's the flexibility that's there that I don't have with an EV. And I would much rather have this than the current crop of EVs because I think it's going to stand the test of time a little bit better than like something that's range limited.
This is a far less disposable vehicle.
Yeah, 100%.
How is the drivetrain refinement? How is the dynamic refinement?
I mean, honestly, that's not what this is about. I mean, it's really, really sharp to turn in. So I would say if you're staying below the 70% limit of the car, like you're going to be, whoa, this thing turns quickly, there's no body roll. But once you lean on it more, if you really drive it harder, like if you're in a canyon or some twisty roads, which I was on, there's just not a lot of tire under it. You know, there's not a lot of tire for grip. So it goes into this crazy understeer and the stability control kicks in. So as a driving tool, like to have fun with, it's not all that great. But I will say, compared to an SUV, it does feel very nimble. It feels like a fun, engaging driving car, as long as you know your limits with it and you know what this is supposed to be. Versus, you know, like it looks cool, but it's not a sporty car. I'm gonna launch it one more time, Jack. I mean, it does move pretty well. Like, once you get it up there and it accelerates out, it pulls far harder than the previous generation car. And we talked about it in the shop.
You're not a burden in traffic anymore.
Right. If you are in EV-only mode and you are locked in there without the gasoline engine kicking on, you do have to be a bit more prepared, which I'll do right now for you so you can see. But that'd be the only consideration. And I think flexibility-wise, they've programmed this enough where you do have the ability to change the drive modes and like how you want to drive this thing. But this is foot to the floor, flat.
Oh, okay. I mean, It's not great, but it's not horrible.
No, but it's noticeably slower when you're only in EV-only mode, EV-only propulsion versus the hybrid power of having the gasoline engine kick on.
The drivetrain tuning, though, I mean, we beat a dead horse. Toyota has done this impeccably well. Just in the passenger seat, I know that we're in EV, and I know when we're in hybrid audibly through like the sound of the four-popper, but it doesn't have this huge elastic band effect. I don't feel like it's a rough feeling drivetrain at all.
It's super refined. I mean, like if you're really looking at it, to your point, this is not disposable. It can be quiet and refined even in its hybrid mode where the gasoline engine kicks on. It's not annoying. The four-cylinder doesn't sound like ass. It just blends into the background. You focus on the smooth, quiet ride and the fact that it is super efficient. The only time it gets rattly is if you force charge this thing. That's when, obviously you have the gasoline engine on, it's generating, it creates NVH, but that's when you hear it, but you're not typically going to be riding around in force charge. So
it's not worse than like a Highlander, though.
No, it's not. I mean, I'm just trying to point out the differences in the different modes, but I think I'm really impressed with how smooth, quiet this is, and just how it's trying to reinvent the segment a little bit, throwing some flair into it.
You can tell they put a lot of effort into this. My last question, and this has been a problem with a lot of the EVs, for me at least, like the EQS, how's the brake pedal feel in this thing?
It's Toyota stuff. I mean, sometimes you hit it and it's all at once, and then sometimes you get into it and it feels like the pedal is very synthetic, but for the type of driving you're doing, I think the calibration is really normal. All the inputs are really natural, like one-to-one.
You don't think about it?
No, I don't think about anything. And I think that's also some of the problems with it, is it's like there's not enough drama there, which is, it's the pros and cons.
It's a perfect appliance.
Yes, it is. It's a huge perfect appliance.
So Mark, with that, I think it's time for you to wrap this up in your final thoughts.
All right, Jack, thanks. Final thoughts on the Prius Prime. This is a car that is very well executed. They took the lessons they had from the previous generation, they recreated it, put it in better packaging. It looks far better than it used to. It's going to have much broader appeal. You've added the power to it, the extended range of 40 plus miles of EV only range, and great fuel economy at around 45 to 50 miles per gallon when you're not in only EV mode. It's quiet. It's comfortable. The safety suite works good, and the infotainment is really good. It's basically checking every single box. If you're thinking about, what do we do? What do we need to do to make this car sell? They've done it. Now the problem is now they've created a desirable Prius, at least in the Prime, and they can only make 10,000 the first year, 15,000, and who knows after that. It's going to be really hard to get one. I'm just going to tell you this right off the bat. It's the frustrating part of the car industry right now. They make these products and you're like, I got to have them, and then you can't get them, or you have to deal with the dealership screwing you over. If you want one, get in line right now. I'm just telling you, you're going to have to wait. Just get in line and try to get one. There's almost nothing to complain about with this car. Now, the things that I do have an issue with is it's more of a design philosophy. The outside looks don't match the inside, match the driving experience. It's a soft, cushy ride. It doesn't particularly handle great. When you're in the wet, the car is just freaking out. It leans so much on traction and stability control because it's putting so much torque through the front wheels. The Prime does not have all-wheel drive. I'll just put that out there. Other than that, the drivability is pretty good for most people. I love the fact that it's a quiet, refined ride. It eats up miles on the highway. In terms of interior design, I've already talked about it. I don't like the fact that they sacrificed the interior layout to make the outside look cool. There's a lot of wasted space in there, and it feels a little bit more claustrophobic because of that in terms of visibility. But they've improved pretty much everything else. The technology works. The infotainment's great. I mean, it's a good car. I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next video.